A cursor hovers over a sectional. The photograph is bright, the room is staged. The delivery promise sits under the Add to Cart button like a dare. Then a second number blooms beside the first. Same frame, same fabric code. 2 prices. One belongs to anyone who wandered in from a search result. The other belongs to a person who has already paid $29 for a year of Wayfair Rewards. The difference is not a seasonal markdown scribbled on a warehouse window. It is a gate. For years, this company sold a simple public story. Home could be infinite. Shipping could be free. The catalog could outrun any showroom on a highway exit. The shopper's only labor was comparison. Now, the cheapest tile may be incomplete. A furniture giant built on the romance of the open catalog now sells a ticket to the better number. The free store does not close. Guests still walk the digital aisles. They still buy a nightstand. They still abandon a cart at 2 a.m. What shifts is the lowest rung. The most aggressive offer becomes a member offer. The public price and the real price stop being the same object. That split is the paradox this film follows.
A retailer trained a generation to treat furniture like a search result, then began charging a modest annual fee for the privilege of seeing its sharpest number. $29 is not a luxury club. It is small enough to look harmless and specific enough to create a new habit. Pay once, and every later search carries a sunk cost. Why hunt 4 other sites if the year is already purchased? This is not a claim that Wayfair has ended its free tier. It is not. The platform is assembling a Costco-lite arrangement inside a market that used to pretend every shopper stood on the same floor. The press release is polite. Under it sits a harder machine. Loyalty-locked pricing, repeating data, and a switching cost built to survive the next query. Watch who is allowed to see the lower number. That is the whole plot.
Home furnishings used to have a geography. A couple drove to a suburban cluster of loading docks and fabric swatches. A salesperson walked the perimeter. Delivery was a separate negotiation. A man with a truck, a tip, a scratched floor. Price lived in the room with the merchandise. You could not tab away. The internet tore the room open. By the early 2000s, catalogs had already proven that Americans would buy a sofa they had never sat on if the photograph was good enough and the return window was wide enough. Then search advertising arrived and turned every living room into a bidding war. The customer did not belong to a store. The customer belonged to a keyword. Wayfair grew inside that rupture. Niraj Shah and Steve Conine had already learned in an earlier company how to stand up endless product pages and let suppliers fulfill the box. The later public company became famous less for owning warehouses than for owning attention. Millions of SKUs, a long tail of nightstands no mall could hold, and a promise that the freight would not punish the click. That promise was not charity. It was customer acquisition policy.
In the decade after the 2014 initial public offering, online retail treated advertising the way a land rush treats steaks. Spend to capture the email. Spend to retarget the cart. Spend until the lifetime value spreadsheet said the next order would heal the first. Furniture made the math cruel. A household does not repurchase a dining table the way it reorders detergent. The interval between purchases can be 7 years, or a divorce, or a move across state lines. The first order has to carry a terrible burden, the cost of being found. Type gray sectional under 1,000, and the page becomes an auction of nearly identical silhouettes. The shopper's loyalty lasts as long as the sort by price toggle. In a market that fragmented, the store is often just the cheapest tile that still looks honest. Whoever blinked first on freight looked expensive. Marketplace sellers absorbed the truck in the headline number. Customers learned a single reflex. If the delivery line is not 0, open another tab. What most people miss is the accounting after the click. Customer acquisition cost is a cash hemorrhage timed to a rare event. When money is cheap and growth is the only story investors reward, the hemorrhage is called investment. When money becomes expensive, the same line item looks like a habit that no longer pays. Home goods are worse than apparel and worse than groceries. Apparel can train a monthly loop. Groceries can train a weekly one. A headboard trains almost nothing.
The platform that wins a headboard has won a photograph and a one-time freight plan. It has not won a habit. So the industry built workarounds that were not quite habits. Wish lists, store-branded cards, email sequences that chase a cart for 30 days and then go silent for a year. Trade programs for designers who actually repeat. Each attempt tried to thicken a thin relationship while the comparison machine improved. Extensions, screenshot groups, listings that hop from domain to domain. There is a second blind spot. Dropship scale creates a catalog that feels like ownership and a supply chain that is not. Thousands of suppliers sit behind the pretty page. Their inventory is elsewhere. Their margins are negotiated.
A platform in that fog has two assets that can actually stick: the interface and any reason for the shopper to stop shopping the fog. By the early 2020s, the old acquisition religion was already under strain. Privacy rules chewed retargeting. The same photograph appeared on too many domains. A company could still buy traffic. It could not buy certainty the traffic would return after the unboxing. If the customer arrives through a search auction, and if the next purchase is years away, then more ads is a treadmill. The missing piece is a reason to consolidate the rare purchases that do happen, the mattress, the desk, the outdoor set, onto one login. The old world assumed the aisle was communal. The new design assumes the aisle can be split. Niraj Shah and Steve Conine are not merchandisers in the old department store sense. They are catalog engineers. Their obsession, visible across two companies and a public ticker, is the infinite aisle, a page for every possible lamp, a filter for every possible shade of oak, a photograph that makes a warehouse in another state feel like a showroom down the street. The ticker does not clap for a pretty page. That obsession has a weakness. An infinite aisle does not create a weekly need. It creates a search. The founders can add SKUs forever. They cannot add birthdays to a sofa. Around them sit factions with colder clocks. Public market holders now score the firm on contribution profit and repeat purchase. Operators inside paid search live or die by cost per order. A merchandising team can win a weekend with a markdown and still lose the year if the winner never returns. The customer they actually have is efficient, not loyal. She screenshots a price, checks a marketplace, asks a group chat whether the legs look cheap. She treats Wayfair as a result, not a home. To her, the brand is a URL that either clears a hurdle or does not. Her screenshot is the competitor. So the company faces a product choice that is not about fabric. Keep renting the next stranger from an auction, or manufacture a person who has a reason to start the next search inside the same login. A paid membership is how you manufacture that person, without pretending a dresser is milk. Look at the incentives, not the slogans. An annual fee does 3 jobs at once. It prints a thin layer of recurring cash that advertising never prints. It identifies the household willing to pre-commit, the household most likely to park more than one project on the platform. And it licenses a different price list, exclusive member-only pricing, plus a rebate clocked at 5% back on purchases. The rebate is not generosity. It is a trail of breadcrumbs that makes the next order feel already discounted by the last. Data follows the fee. A guest is a weather event. A member is a climate. 12 months of status leave a cleaner residue. Categories of intent, timing of projects, a willingness to consolidate. Forecasting teams can do more with that residue than with a cart that arrived from a generic keyword and vanished. Suppliers feel the hunger from the other side of the box.
A factory that cuts foam does not want a random spike. It wants a signal that active buyers resemble last quarter's buyers. Member volume is not a promise. In a dropship web, less random is a kind of power. Shah and Conine do not have to hate the casual browser. They only have to notice she is expensive to greet and cheap to lose. The membership does not argue with her. It changes the floor under the person who stays. Let the shopper's own consistency do the policing. A club converts wandering into self-enforced routine. It is the logic of a fragmented category. If you cannot own the customer through daily need, you rent her attention forever, or you sell her a reason to stop wandering. The fee is the reason, dressed as a reward. That is the entire psychology.
In July 2024, a new product appears on Wayfair's Investor Wire. The headline is cheerful: Wayfair Rewards, a paid membership designed, the company says, to help customers master home. The terms that matter sit in the body: an annual charge of $29, benefits that include 5% back, and access to exclusive member-only pricing. The Wall Street Journal, the same season, reports the same nucleus in a colder frame: a paid loyalty program as the company seeks to boost sales. Two independent accounts, one corporate, one newspaper, lock the same bolts: the fee, the rebate, the gated offers. No rumor required. This is the turning point, and it is smaller than a war and larger than a coupon. A button is a policy. Once the button exists, the catalog is no longer a single public list. It is a list with a fork. The fork does not require a lockout. Guests can still check out. The open tier remains. The fork only requires that the most competitive number be allowed to live in a room the guest does not enter unless she pays. Watch the machine in the present tense, because this is how a gated list still behaves after the launch year. A shopper lands from a query. She is a guest. The page shows a dining table at a public figure. Another shopper, already enrolled, loads the same SKU and receives a member figure. The photograph does not change. The mill that cut the oak does not change. The variable is status. Status is purchased. Now, send both numbers into the wild. Shopping carousels, browser extensions, deal blogs, the group chat, they scrape what they can see. What they can see most often is the guest surface. The index of the lowest price becomes an index of the unlocked price. The locked price sits off stage, waiting for people who have already joined. And then the comparison engine starts to lie without meaning to. Not a fraud, a structural blind spot. The public web ranks the visible. The membership hides the sharper blade inside an account wall. A rational guest, trusting the grid, may conclude another retailer won. A rational member never consults the grid the same way, because her grid is the login she already funded. Here, the sunk cost device stops being a metaphor and becomes arithmetic. $29 against a table is nothing. $29 against a year in which the household buys only a single lamp is a losing ticket. The fee, therefore, has to change the year, not decorate one item. It has to pull the rug, the outdoor set, the replacement chairs, the extra dresser into the same sequence. Consolidation is not a side effect. Consolidation is the merchandise. The rebate sweetens that pull. Each order deposits a credit that makes the next order feel prepaid. Member-only figures sweeten it again by making the alternative, shopping out as a guest, even on the same domain, look like a refusal to use a tool already bought. The mind hates unused tools. There is a nasty twin to that psychology, and it does not flatter the spreadsheet. Adverse selection walks in the door first. The person most eager to join is often the person already hovering over a large cart, doing the $29 math against a single checkout. She extracts the gated discount, harvests the rebate, and disappears until the next apartment. If the program fills up with those hunters, the company has sold a cheaper table and called it loyalty. The membership only pays if enough of those hunters stay long enough to become boring. Another room, another season, another project started from the same home screen. Barriers break in sequence. First, the cultural barrier. Furniture sites were supposed to be free to browse at the best available terms. Other giants already trained people to pay for warehouses and two-day boxes. A home goods website asking for a ticket still feels like a category error, until the first member-only tag appears beside a number that actually hurts to miss. Second, the advertising barrier. If members start journeys internally, some fraction of paid search becomes optional. Not all of it. Strangers still arrive from auctions. But the firm can begin to treat the member as a retained asset and the guest as a recruitment pool. Recruitment is allowed to be less pretty. Third, the supplier barrier. Once a platform can point to a cohort that might buy more than once a year, it can ask for promotions a factory would not donate to the entire internet. A discount sprayed onto a public carousel is a discount donated to every rival's comparison table. A discount sprayed onto members stays closer to home. Dominoes tilt outward. Rivals in the fragmented aisle face a copy problem. Match the club, and they train customers to expect gates everywhere. Skip the club, and they win the guest who still lives on the open grade, often the least profitable person in the category. Regional chains with real showrooms feel a different squeeze. Their figure is still public, still touchable, still easy to photograph under fluorescent light. The online club can shade a number the floor staff cannot see. Reverse logistics joins the fight. A sofa that comes back is not a coupon. It is foam, miles, a second truck, a damaged carton, a call center minute. A member's return is still expensive. It is also attached to a person who might place another order before the year expires. A guest's return is a closed file. Incentives inside the warehouse and the queue will drift toward the file that still has a clock on it, even if the handbook still recites equality. Financing stacks on top. A household that already accepted a yearly charge is a household primed to accept installments, protection plans, and add-on services that turn one table into a stream. The membership is the first yes.
Later yeses become cheaper to ask. Professional buyers complicate the picture. Designers and small landlords already behave like repeat organisms. A consumer club that rhymes with a trade account risks cannibalizing a channel that paid attention without a $29 ritual. Or it might finally drag the amateur renovator into designer-like frequency. The documents do not settle that tension. They only create it. Idealism in this sector sounded like transparency. The same photograph, the same freight, the same figure for anyone with a browser. Reality is a margin. Reality is an auction that never sleeps. Reality is a customer who will leave for $12 and a slightly worse stain guard. The membership is how the platform answers that reality without announcing a surrender. It does not resolve. It leaves a double catalog stapled to one domain. People who pay inhabit one economy. People who do not inhabit another. Between them sits a charge small enough to shrug at and precise enough to sort a market. The guest store stays lit. The sharper numbers recede into an account.
The next time a deal site posts a screenshot, ask a harder question than whether the object looks cheap. Ask which room the camera was standing in.
A price used to be a street lamp. It stood outside. Anyone walking past could use it to navigate. Rivals adjusted to it, reporters quoted it, software ranked it. The number was not merely what you paid. It was how a market talked to itself. Loyalty-locked pricing changes the grammar. The lamp moves indoors. You may still walk the street. You may still guess the distance. The clearest light now belongs to people who bought a key. That is the larger principle hiding in a home goods club. Not that one Boston catalog invented the subscription. Not that a modest annual charge is dramatic on its own. The principle is that in a fragmented market where the customer's native behavior is to chase the lowest visible result, the durable move is to stop making the lowest result fully visible. Switching costs do not have to be contracts and cancellation mazes. They can be a receipt plus a private list. Data capture is the quiet twin. A public price produces a transaction. A membership produces a year. The year is the asset. A sequence of rooms, a seasonality, a probability that the next project starts in the same interface.
Platforms do not need a villainous hunger for surveillance to chase that asset. They need only notice that weather is hard to staff and climate is easier. Carry the image outward and the aisle multiplies. One URL, two economies. Acceptable figures in the open, competitive figures behind glass. Casual traffic still useful as a billboard and a recruitment pond. High-frequency people treated as the real store. Workers, suppliers, and comparison engines all reorient around the glass without anyone publishing a manifesto. The aftertaste is a slight nausea about what cheap means. Cheap for whom? Cheap at which login? Cheap according to which scraper? A generation learned to trust the grid as a public utility. The grid still hums. It just hums over a surface that companies are learning to thin. None of this requires the free door to slam. The Costco-lite pattern is more unsettling than a shutdown. Shutdowns are honest. Dual aisles let a brand keep the language of openness while relocating the fight to a room that does not trend on a search carousel.
Picture a warehouse of photographs that never closes, and a second warehouse stacked inside it, reachable by a small yearly coin.
Families wander both. Only one set of families is standing where the ink is wettest. The coin looks like a perk. It functions like a wall. If every destination that once competed in public begins to keep a private list, the last open number is not a bargain. It is leftover light. When the lowest price in the house is no longer a public fact, who is the comparison still for?